Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Well, I finally did it. I managed to catch a PS5 in the wild. It only took several months of actively searching and about 100 Pokeballs, but it was worth it. And you know the first game I had to get with it was, of course, Ratchet Clank Rift Apart. The first showing of this game looked incredible, and it was one of those I have to see it for myself type of games, and boy did it live up. My history with the Ratchet & Clank series is pretty short considering the fact that I only played the remake on the PS4 and this one. That's it. That's all that I've played, which definitely makes me qualified to review the latest entry to this very popular series. I have to be honest though, the PS4 remake, for whatever reason, did not click with me. It just wasn't as fun to me, which had me worried about this new entry. But luckily my worries were blown away by the first mission. But before we get into it, if you like this video and want to see more videos like it in the future, please give the video a thumbs up or just check out my other stuff, and also consider subscribing for more content like this in the future. All this stuff really does mean a lot and it would really help the channel out. Anywho, let's jump into the dimension where I review this game, and let's see if it holds up as a PS5 exclusive. The story begins with the evil Dr. Nefarious stealing an invention called the Dimensionator, hoping to find a dimension where he can finally win. This ultimately results in him accidentally damaging the weapon, and the dimensions start to bleed into one another. Now there are different versions of characters, like the big baddie Dr. Nefarious and his counterpart Emperor Nefarious. Emperor Nefarious is actually a pretty cool character. I kinda like him more than the other Nefarious, to be honest, especially when it comes to his design. But either way, there's two villains in this game, and they both are delightful. It's up to Ratchet & Clank to restore the Dimensionator and restore the universe. Of course, they aren't alone in this adventure, as a new character, Rivet, is introduced as Ratchet's counterpart in the other dimension. Rivet is a great addition to the series, and I really hope she stays for more entries because she is a fantastic character. She has her own motivations and goals. There's also another character introduced, and her name is Kit, and she basically plays a little like Clank, except she has a whole new mode to her. Holy crap. Of course, I won't go into their backstories here, but they are both so great, and I love their inclusion here. Overall, the story is the basic good versus evil plot. However, it's Ratchet and Rivet's relationship and their dedication to finding the other Lombax that keeps me hooked in the story. I wanted to know how they were going to handle that plot development. Overall, it's a great setup for the game, and I love the new characters that they introduced. And even just seeing the counterparts of other side characters was great too. The graphics are absolutely out of this world. Literally, a huge upgrade to the remake that came out on the PS4. The fur and animations are on Pixar levels. There's not really a huge gap between cutscenes in engine and those that are more cinematic. They kind of just blend together, and it's just fantastic to see. NPCs are often found in levels just roaming around doing their own thing, like trying to survive or not get shot. You know, just normal NPC stuff. The screen could get really busy at times with little to no dips in the frame rate. It's honestly really impressive how the devs managed to get so many particles flying around and have it run as smooth as it does. Both Rivet and Ratchet have excellent animation, making their actions feel believable while also keeping to the cartoony look of the series. Overall, this game just looks absolutely fantastic, top to bottom. Which is no surprise because this is Insomniac we're talking about, and they made Spider-Man on the PS4, they made the other Ratchet & Clank games, so really there's no surprise with this kind of quality here. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is an action-adventure game that has you going from planet to planet in these open levels. Some of these areas are really open with some incentives to go out and explore. Then there are planets with more linear level designs that point you in the direction you need to go. Both types of areas work really well in this game. I personally like the more open levels, but going back through them to get collectibles can be a bit tedious. Every area is filled with enemies, puzzles, and platforming challenges in the form of rifts. Rifts are the dimensions you can open up and do a fun platforming challenge. These are really cool, especially when you consider how technically impressive it is that you can just open these rifts with these challenges instantly. It's so seamless opening the portal and just running in there. It's like having the Doctor Strange portal, or the portals. It's honestly so interesting that the first time I opened a rift, I would just go back and forth admiring the portal. Rifts can also be used to traverse the world in certain sections, which just adds to the traversal mechanics in the game. Also, before I forget, Clank has his own special gameplay sections, known as interdimensional puzzle rooms. That's what I call it. I don't know what the game actually calls them, but Clank's goal in these is to get the other Clanks to the other side. Honestly, I don't mind these, as they added a nice break in the game where you mostly slaughter your enemies in the most embarrassing way. Combat revolves around the gunplay with some melee combat added in for good measure. Honestly though, if there's one critique I have with the combat, it's the melee portion. You have a simple combo, a smash attack, and you can throw your weapon. That's about it. It's honestly disappointing that you can't upgrade that aspect of combat, especially if you're someone like me and uses it very often. Like maybe just adding some more combos, or adding some combos in the air, because this is also kind of a platformer. That would be really cool, adding some attacks in the air or something. I don't know, something to give the melee combat more life. It doesn't have to be Devil May Cry or anything, just a little bit more. I understand that the game is more about the guns than it is about the melee combat, but if you're going to add melee combat in the game, at least add a little bit more to it. But yeah, the gunplay is obviously the star of the show, with a wide variety of quirky, weird weapons. There's one glove that you can get that has you spawning a fungus creature to help you out, and there's also a gun that turns your enemies into a garden. There's a ton of imagination poured into these weapons, and each one can be upgraded to become even better. By the end of the game, I had a pretty good amount of fully upgraded weapons at my disposal, and it's cool because the weapon's base form is so different from its final form. So it's really fun to kind of work on a weapon for a while and then see the outcome of its final form. I had a blast leveling up each weapon to its full potential. The enemies in the game are pretty varied for the most part, although I would have liked to see one or two more types of enemies sprinkled in there. But other than that, I really enjoyed each of their designs. The robots are probably my favorite though. I love their little quips that they say in combat. Combat overall is just so satisfying, from the actual gunplay to the upgrade system. And it just leaves me wanting more guns to play around with, which is a good thing. The soundtrack was composed by both, if I butcher these names, I am so sorry, Mark Mothersbaugh and Wataru Hokoyama. The music is interesting, to say the least. The score combines orchestral arrangements with synthetic electronics to make for an epic sounding soundtrack. On one hand, it's not that memorable to me, but on the other hand, it's so cinematic that it just falls into the background of every scene. And I couldn't see the game without this kind of soundtrack. It's not bad in the slightest. I don't mean that it's not memorable as a bad thing. It just, I don't know, there's nothing to me personally that stands out other than the main theme. But of course that doesn't make it a bad soundtrack in the slightest. It takes a lot of work and effort for this, and I think both composers did an amazing job at arranging this soundtrack. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is an incredible game with lovable characters and an epic adventure that takes you to new worlds and dimensions. It's honestly got me really excited for the next entry in the series so I can see these cast of characters again, with more wacky shenanigans that add even more depth and innovation to the gameplay. It's honestly incredible that this game even exists. I may not be the biggest Ratchet & Clank fan, but wow is this game fantastic. And because I wasn't a big Ratchet & Clank fan before, you know that's some high praise. If every Ratchet & Clank game can be like this from here on out, yeah, I'm gonna be a big Ratchet & Clank fan. Luckily, the adventure doesn't overstay its welcome, but has enough content to justify the purchase. I don't really have a lot of complaints about this one, honestly. I'm struggling to come up with some. Although I did one time get stuck in one of the rifts, and that evoked a new type of fear in me. But luckily I was able to load into an earlier save and everything was good, but man did that scare me. I'm going to give Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart a 9 out of 10. Again, I don't have many issues with the game. The pacing was good, the writing was excellent, and the graphics are out of this dimension. I think my biggest complaint is the melee combat, which isn't a huge issue in the slightest because the game is mostly about the guns, but the melee combat is just not fleshed out as I would have liked it to be. But let me know down below what your thoughts on the game are. Have you been able to get a PS5 yet to actually play the game? And if you don't have a PS5 yet, is Rift Apart going to be the first game you get when you eventually get a PS5? Because it was definitely my pick, and it's easily worth picking up a PS5 if you are able to. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. God bless.